Tight deadlines, a crawling clock, a mission of critical importance. I don't know if I've ever felt more like Jack Bauer in my entire life. The objectives for the day seemed impossible. Survive my own college graduation, race to a neighboring town for a must win state softball tournament, and somehow squeeze in some mandatory family time. My field partner, Jason Reedy, was by my side the whole way, but the clock was ticking and the margin for error was zero. Did I complete the mission on time, or did the day blow up in our faces? I'm Bill Roseberry. Welcome to my channel. Events occur in real time. Enjoy this original fact or fiction feature from my storytelling series, serving up family, friendship, and heavy doses of Gen X nostalgia on the regular. The following events take place between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. Events occur in real time. 9 a.m. Mission briefing, the hidden asset. I peeked around the corner of my room, scanning for hostiles. I had to ensure no one was watching. This was a risky play, but a tactical necessity. I tugged on my softball pants, pulled the jersey over my head, and then slid the black graduation gown over the top. A Class A academic disguise. The mission parameters were narrow. I had to get from the SIUE graduation ceremony to the slow-pitch softball state tournament to join my teammates. If everything fell right, extraction and insertion were possible. I was still compromised, drowsy and hungover from the previous night's failed operation. We had been decimated in the first game at state by a team of behemoths in Coors Light uniforms from northern Illinois who looked like pumping iron and mashing softballs was their full-time profession. We tried to ease the loss with a plethora of frosty bottles, but the amnesia hadn't taken. Now I was dragging when I needed to be on. Mom had laid down the law. Missing the walk across the stage for a bachelor's degree in mass communications was not an option. I wasn't missing it for a stupid softball game, as she so eloquently described. She didn't understand the hell we went through to place 7th out of 56 teams in the districts to earn this state spot. I was the manager. My team was counting on it. 9:15 a.m. Intel update. Compromised parameters. The clock was ticking toward the 11 a.m. graduation and the 2 p.m. first pitch. I had to finish getting dressed, go pick up Reedy, and get my parents, all my grandparents, my aunt and uncle, and my 9-year-old cousin Brandon all rushed in and out for graduation, too. I was still perplexed with why Reedy was going. He never took education seriously. He was not dumb, but just never applied himself. He finally settled for his GED for himself, but was adamant about how proud he was of me for my accomplishments. He was steadfast about attending. As I sat my silly hat atop my head and waved the stupid tassel out of my line of sight, my mom walked in. She had a blank look, her eyes welling with tears. "Bill, I can't go to your graduation today," she said in a quivering voice. It's your Aunt Anita. She passed away this morning of a heart attack." The mission shifted instantly. Aunt Anita had practically raised my grandma. Their bond was impenetrable. My mom needed to be with her. My timeline just got more dire. Graduation, softball, and then an immediate wellness check on grandma. "Your aunt and uncle are on their way here to get me and take me to mom's. And Brandon is going to ride with your dad and your other grandparents to your graduation," she squeaked out. Poor Brandon. At 9 years old, he didn't have a say in his day. He was going to be bored out of his mind. But hell, what was I thinking? I wasn't any different. I wasn't exactly dealing with free will for myself either. The emotional payload of the day was kidding heavy. 9:45 a.m. Asset acquisition. Everything weighed heavy on my mind as I whipped my forest green Explorer in the driveway to pick up my sidekick, Reedy. He was perched in his smoking throne, a Marlboro Red hanging from his lips, smoke rolling into the air. "Come on, man, we're on a timeline," I yelled. "Calm down, dude, I'm coming," Reedy said as he slowly peeled himself from the overworked chair, took one more monster drag, and flipped the button. Reedy climbed in, glanced at my gown, and started laughing. "Why are you already wearing your dress, princess?" "It's a graduation gown, you smartass," I snapped. "And I've got my uniform on under this. I have 0 time to kill." He laughed harder, his eyes widening. "You have your uniform on under that thing? What the hell, dude?" 10:30 a.m. Tactical insertion. Vadalabene Center. On the drive to graduation, I filled Reedy in on the family tragedy that occurred in the morning. I assigned him the task of keeping Brandon entertained throughout the commencement. It wouldn't be hard. Brandon looked up to Reedy. After all, Reedy and I were both at the hospital the day he was born, so he'd literally known us his whole life. We even stared at him through the glass, peering into the newborn, lying in his little crib looking tiny, pink, and ugly. We breached the SIUE arena, and I gasped at the sea of student hostiles. There must have been 1,000,000 of them. This was going to take forever. My dad, his parents, and Brandon were already in position. My grandma bustled over and planted a sloppy identification kiss on my cheek. "We're so proud of you," she affectionately said. "Thank you, Grandma," I responded, hanging my head and blushing a bit. I glanced at Reedy, and he smirked, making a sly, kissy face. "Okay, I've got to go find my seat before this thing gets started. I'll look for you guys in the crowd," I said to my family, at least the ones that were able to attend, thinking of my mom and other grandma for a moment. "Come on, Brandon, you're hanging with me today, little dude," Reedy offered, putting his enormous hand on the little guy's shoulder. Brandon smiled big and said, "Oh, okay." I was positioned in the middle of over 550 graduates. The clock was at 11:30 before the keynote speaker even took the podium. I was squirming so much that my gown rose up, exposing my softball pants. What are you wearing?" the girl next to me scoffed. "Don't worry about it," I dismissed her. I looked at the control room, the stands, and saw Brandon and Reedy both fighting to keep their eyes open. My best friend was literally drooling in support. The speaker was some 1984 Mass Comm grad, so I should be excited to hear his journey. But I had too much on my mind and too tight a timeline to care. I'm sure one day I'll look back at this and care, but not today, I pondered. As the snail pace continued, the keynote speaker finally finished his speech, and it was time to call us on stage. The time was pushing 12:30 p.m. I turned back to find my family and saw Brandon taking responsibility over Reedy. My little cousin was tugging on Reedy's sleeve as my behemoth buddy was zonked out with his mouth open. What a pal. He's willing to torture himself just to support me. Now that's a best friend, I thought. As the chancellor started calling the A names, I knew Roseberry was a long way off, and it's not like I could just leave before the Z's got called. 1:10 p.m. The stage. "You may head toward the stage," an attendant directed. Finally. Slowly, the line crept toward the stage. I anxiously awaited my 10 seconds of fame with the chancellor. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, anxious, nervous, proud, scared, embarrassed. There were so many emotions showering my body and mind. "William Allen Roseberry!" I walked across the stage as the arena erupted. The chancellor handed me the diploma. As the red leather touched my fingers, the weight of the accomplishment hit me. Bachelor of Science, Mass Communication. For 10 seconds, the clock stopped. Then I checked my watch. It was 1:20 p.m. First pitch was in 40 minutes. 1:50 p.m. Extraction. I pushed through the crowd and found my family. Luckily, Reedy stands out in the crowd. I saw him first and made a beeline for him. "Congratulations, dude. I'm proud of you," he said. You finally accomplished something with your life, he added with a big chuckle. I endured the mandatory photo op with a tactical headlock on Brandon and another sloppy grandma kiss. I grabbed Reedy and hightailed it to the Explorer. I peeled off the gown like Superman, or at least a very stressed-out softball pitcher. I turned the key and the dashboard clock displayed 1:50 p.m. We were going to be late. I darted out of the lot, using the shoulder to bypass halted traffic, narrowly avoiding campus security. 2:15 p.m. Target site. Find my softball. I arrived at the park, threw on my cleats, grabbed my ball bag, and raced to the pavilion. Come on, man, we've got to go, I snapped at Reedy. Getting him to move with a purpose was damn near impossible. I'll figure it out, dude. I ain't running, he barked back. I looked at the schedule. We were playing on Field 5. That was on the other side of the park. When I reached the destination, I looked at the scoreboard. You're late, college boy. It's about time you made it, one of the guys yelled to a round of forced laughter. Current score, down 5-1 at the end of the fourth. The mood in the dugout was sullen. I took a position as cheerleader and scorekeeper, watching the clock, the true opponent. By 2:40 p.m., it was the top of the seventh. We had chipped the deficit to 7-6. Dean, my longtime friend and assistant manager, looked at me. You're going to hit in this inning. You're batting third. As I stepped on the field, the smell of leather, dirt, sweat, and sunflower seeds melded for a familiar and welcomed aroma for my nose. I loved this game. I stepped into the box, my brain a whirlwind of Ananita, graduation tassels, and high-speed driving. I couldn't focus. Then I heard Reedy from the fence. You've got this, dude. He may have cared about sports a little more than education, but it wasn't much. What he did care about was his best friend, and his mission today was supporting me. I tightened the straps on my batting gloves and scratched at the dirt in the box with my cleats. A double and a pop-out brought me to the plate with a chance to tie the game or give us the lead if I parked one. I glared out at the pitcher and focused. Ball one, the umpire yelled. I started over again, climbing back in the box. This time the pitcher served up a fat, juicy, flat pitch. I unfurled the bat and blasted a double into the right field corner. The tying run crossed. The bench erupted. Way to poop on it, one of the teammates proclaimed from the bench. Unfortunately, I got stranded on second heading into the bottom of the seventh with the score knotted 7-7 with the clock against us. D it up, boys, and go get 'em, I encouraged them as they ran out onto the field. But the first pitch broke our backs. I knew it as soon as I heard the sound on the aluminum bat. Walk-off home run. Game over. Mission. As our opponents mobbed each other on the field, my teammates, dejected, slinked to the dugout. The silence on our side was as thick as the humid Midwestern August air. Losing is never fun, and this was going to sit in my craw for a long time, especially since I'd personally gone from hero to forgotten stat line in a matter of minutes. Snapping me back into reality was the thought of my grandma. After all the chaos of the day, one thought entered my head. Family first. I consoled my teammates. As the initial shock started to wear off, a few laughs could be heard while changing out of our cleats. It would take a week or so to appreciate the special season we'd had, but the healing had begun. At least you got a hit. The rest of it sucked, Reedy said when he walked over. It is what it is. Let's go check on Grandma, I saw. I got you, dude. 4 p.m. The debrief. Family first. We drove to Grandma's with ice cubes. Today was a good day playing on the CD player. I wasn't sure if it actually was a good day, but the music helped. It was Reedy's favorite song, and I dug it a lot, too. We entered the house to find the family gathered around the TV, watching the VHS tape of the graduation Dad had recorded. To add to the frustrations of the day, I had forgotten Grandpa was still at the rehab center recovering from his knee surgery. Mom was going to stay with Grandma so she wouldn't be alone. When Grandma saw Reedy and I, she rose to her feet and came to hug us. At under 5 feet tall, she was the tiniest, sweetest. "I'm so proud of you," she said as she wrapped her little arms around me. "I'm sorry about Aunt Anita, Grandma," I replied. I could feel my eyes well with water. "It's okay, thank you," she said, looking up at me with love. When it came for Reedy's hug, Grandma disappeared, engulfed by his enormous body. All you could see were her teeny hands on his back, miles from meeting each other. Reedy and I sat down on the couch as Grandma squeezed between us, grabbing each of our hands as the family sat quietly, awaiting to hear my name called on the TV. Well, mostly quiet. "Do I have to watch this again?" Brandon complained. "No, I think you've suffered enough, little Skippy. Go play in the backyard." I gave him permission to be dismissed, but not before acknowledging him by his hated nickname, accompanied by a dirty look. He didn't hesitate to run out of the room. It had been an emotionally draining, high-anxiety roller coaster. When the tape of the graduation ended with some uncomfortable sobs from Mom and Grandma, I was ready to call it a day. We did the old Irish goodbye, hugging and acknowledging everyone before we left. I dropped Reedy off at his house. "Thanks for being there, man. It means an awful lot," I said seriously. "It's all good. Today I didn't even have to use my AK. I gotta say it was a good day," Reedy said, laughing as he quoted Ice Cube. "I'm proud of you, dude." 6 p.m. Mission accomplished. Look, I wasn't saving the world from terrorists, but the stress of that day felt exactly like an episode of 24. I'll never forget the anxiety. But now for the debrief, the actual reality. In the real world, we didn't make it in time for me to play softball. We pulled up right after the team had been eliminated. But as any good storyteller knows, rewriting history just a little bit makes for a much better ending. If you survived this high-stakes tale, go ahead and hit like, smash subscribe, and report back to Bill Roseberry Stories next week for the next piece of original content. Your turn in the comments. Have you ever had a day where the clock was your absolute worst enemy? Let me know your highest stress stories below. Before you clock out, make sure to click on the link to retrieve the hard copy of my stories. The Reedy Chronicles Volume 1 is here, featuring the first 5 Reedy stories I wrote with behind-the-scenes extras served up in a magazine that looks like it's straight from the 90s. Get that Gen X nostalgia and the stories of Reedy now. And the clock starts over next week with another Fact or Fiction feature. I'll see you right here at Bill Roseberry Stories.